Welcome to Hospitality on the Rise, the podcast about the people shaping the hospitality industry and their journeys. I'm your host, Alice Cheng, founder and CEO of Culinary Agents, hospitality's go-to hiring platform. And I'm here to give you your dose of virtual mentorship. Here, we'll be sharing the stories, lessons learned, and advice from hospitality leaders who've carved out their own path to success. After all, this industry is where many get their start and go on to do incredible things. Whether you're a pro, starting out, or just love the hustle, this podcast highlights what makes hospitality extraordinary: the people. So excited to have Chef Missy Robbins here with us today. Missy is the restaurateur, author, and co-founder of Grovehouse Hospitality Group, which includes amazing restaurants such as Lilia, Misi, and MISIPASTA, which is a direct-to-guest dining and experiential retail. Oh, that's a mouthful. She is the 2018 Esquire's Chef of the Year and 2018 James Beard Foundation Award winner for Best Chef, amongst many other accolades and exciting things we're going to talk about. Thank you, Missy, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
I've been very fortunate and selfishly recently been able to hear you speak about your career and kind of some of the ways that you're kind of looking at your leadership and the next steps that you're taking. But we're curious, how did it all begin? How did you enter this industry?
Oh my God, it was so long ago. Um, Honestly, it really came from my upbringing, and my family was just my parents were both really into travel and dining, and I was fortunate enough that they took us. I have a brother. They took us along with them. So, I was in France when I was 14. I ate at my first Michelin star in London when I was 12. I traveled to Israel and like when I was 5, and like kind of only remember, like I remember the food, like good and bad. Um and then, Italy in my teens, and then I grew up in Connecticut, about an hour and a half from the city, New York, and special occasions were always had at these like fancy restaurants, and I was just inspired, and I was sort of inspired by dining as a whole, not just being a chef. I went in through the route of being a chef, but I was always interested in the whole picture. Design, glassware, china, atmosphere, uniforms, like it all kind of fascinated me.
Did you like envision yourself having your own restaurant one day when when you were young, or was that kind of
I
like,
did, but I thought it, like, I never thought that it would happen as it did. I thought that I would sort of go have a different career. I went to regular, liberal arts college and studied art history and psychology, and thought I'd have a career doing something, a little bit more traditional, and didn't know that there was real opportunity for me to become a cook. And it turned out that that wasn't the truth. And um, I think like now in hindsight, it's kind of funny that I'm like, oh, I wanted to open a restaurant like in retirement. But I'm happy I did it this way.
yeah? And what was your first restaurant job?
First restaurant job was in Washington D.C. I went to Georgetown University, and first restaurant job was at a restaurant called 1789. Very like what we called New American then, and sort of mid Atlantic DC. Lots of like local fish, and it was the 90s. Goat cheese crusted lamb chops and Caesar salads and plates of smoked salmon and seafood stews, and um, but I learned all my basic skills there. Like, I walked into that kitchen and told them I wanted to learn and I had no experience, and I asked them if they would teach me, and they told me to show up on Friday and Saturday nights, and I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that." And they're like, "Well, that's what we have available." But it was above the bar I hung out in, so I now had, like, a back entrance to the bar, my college bar, and I fell in love with it on night 1. Like, I showed up, I didn't know how to hold a knife, I didn't know anything about stations or anything really. And they threw me in. Like, they threw me into garde manger my very first night. Someone typically didn't show up. And I worked with the sous chef side by side. And it was really cool. We did 300 something covers, and I didn't look at the clock all night. And I realized that like that energy was good for me.
Yeah, so you did that kind of part-time through school, or
No, I did it senior year.
oh, so you wum, were
I
already kinda
started
thinking about what's
I
next.
started senior year second semester, right after my 22nd birthday, the day after my 22nd birthday, and I had a few months left of school. And then I left for the summer from that job, and then I came back and worked there for a year. They were just really great. They like took me in, and I had these dreams of going to work at Charlie Trouter's in Chicago, and had been in contact with him, and that's how I ended up cooking my last semester senior year. Is that he was like, I really think you should get some experience before you come here. And I ended up, like, just kinda having to chase him, and I was like, "You know what? Like, I'm happy here. These guys have taken me under their wing." There was a chef and 2 sous chefs, and they were just, like, they all were really different, but all taught me something, and I've carried through a lot of what they've taught me from that very first job. And that's where I got my start, and I'm happy I did, and I still think to this day, like, having spent a few days in Charlie's Kitchen and knowing a lot of people that work there, um, I probably wouldn't be a chef. Like, I don't think I would have lasted in that environment.
Yeah, and it's interesting. One of the main reasons we do surveys periodically at Culinary Agents, and for back of house, one of the main reasons for people stay in jobs is because they're learning. They feel like they have some sort of mentorship or somebody's teaching them and they're learning, and
Yeah.
that really is a retention
Yeah.
mechanism.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's proof. But you did make it to Chicago.
I did many years later. Many, many, many years later.
Yeah, how was that transition? Like, you're in DC cooking and you're enjoying and learning. Were you starting to think like you want more experience in a different city, or you wanted to fulfill that? Like, I want to get to Chicago.
Oh, Chicago was years later. I went
Oh,
to New York. I was in New York for 9 years before that.
oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, I you missed a whole part. You
I
missed
did.
a whole chunk.
I skipped a
Yeah,
whole
I was
page.
in New York from 20, I think I moved here when I was 24, 23, until 32. With a short break, I went to Italy for several months to cook. But no, I really, yeah, DC wasn't like the culinary mecca of the world. And at the time, kind of, if you wanted to do what I wanted to do and be at the top of the game, like, you sort of went to New York. And I didn't have any plans of really like staying here long term. And I ended up really liking it, and a lot of my friends from high school lived here in college, and um, I had great jobs, and I worked for great chefs, and I went to cooking school, and I I ended up staying for many, many years, and really only left because I got the job in Chicago. And it was the kind of job that I don't think at the time I would have gotten in New York, and so I sort of took a leap of faith and went to Chicago. I have family there. My brothers lived there for almost 30 years and with his family, and my mom is from there. My grandmother was there when I was growing up. So I grew up going to Chicago quite a bit. It's very different living there than visiting there. But the job was really at Spiaggia was pivotal to my career. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't spent those 5 years there, and really immersed myself into fine dining again and immersed myself into Italian cooking and learning from Tony Mantuano, who was the chef partner. And I think it was like the best move I could have made. I didn't love Chicago, but it's partially because I just loved New York, and I thought I could like compare Chicago to New York, and that's not really the case. And so I was eager to get back, but I did stay for 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard you talk about your time at Spiaggia a couple of times, and specifically about working with Tony and for him. Do you have an example of? I mean, clearly you absorbed or some of the advice and his techniques. Do you have an example of something that you learned from him that has continued to stick with you?
I mean, everything. He was number 1, he was the calmest, kindest chef mentor I've ever had. And he was a friend, is a friend. I was out to dinner with him last night actually. Um, he's a great friend, he's a great mentor. Um, he knows how to talk to people, and he taught me most of what I know about Italian food other than, like, reading in my time in Italy. There was a real base there, and he was a real traditionalist at the time, and, like, really kinda was able to teach about not just, like, fine dining and what his expectations were, because Spiaggia was really rooted in in Michelin dining in Italy, and Michelin wasn't in Chicago when I was there. And I think he had such a knowledge, and at the time there wasn't Instagram, there was stuff on the internet, but not like there is now, so I really relied on him. And I had a huge learning curve. I hadn't worked in Italian food except for the several months I worked in Italy. And I was not just expected to like know Italian food, but I was also now running this four-star kitchen um that was very fine dining, and I had been out of fine dining for a while, and I had 50 employees, and so I had to really dive in, and Tony was patient and just really giving of his time and knowledge.
Yeah, and we should hear more stories about chefs and leaders that have that demeanor and ran kitchens that way. Um, because during that time, not to say it wasn't common, but during that time, media was kind of highlighting a different type of, culture.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't have that demeanor until a few years ago. I mean, really starting with like when I opened Lilia, and that was really important to me. And it's taken a lot of hard work to have a calmer, kinder demeanor and understanding and listening better. Um, I did grow up in a world where you said yes, chef, and you kind of just did what they told you to do. And kitchens have changed a lot. And I'm so happy that like I'm different than I was, but Tony is just naturally like that. He's just a mellow guy. Like I used to call him and be like, "Are you napping?" Like he's just like he's just mellow. Like that's just who he is. I'm not a mellow person. I've mellowed out quite a bit, but that's not like my natural state of being.
Mm. Look at that leadership evolving. I love it. So take me to New York now. So you were in
Yeah.
Chicago and then you decided I'm going back to New York because
I
you didn't
really
love
wanted
living in Chicago.
I really wanted to go back to New York. And at first, for a couple of years, I was trying to kind of work on my own project and open a place, and it was difficult. I was like flying back and forth to the city and looking at spaces, and like I kind of didn't know what I was doing, and I was going to have to raise money, and I was getting antsy, and it was becoming like more and more challenging. And so this job appeared at a Voce, and I applied for it and never in a million years thought I would get it at all. I was Chicago, I was kind of unknown. At the time, Andrew Carmelini was the chef at a Voce, and he was leaving. He was the hottest, most publicized chef in New York at the time, and a Voce was a really hot restaurant. And I I guess I interview really well. I don't know. But they came and did a tasting at Spiaggia, and I was very open with Tony, and it worked out. And it was also a pivotal time in my career. It was the first time that I was running a kitchen without a chef partner above me, and I really had to kind of lead on my own and not have that sort of backdrop of security of someone helping me. And I had to build my own team, and I had to come up with a style of cooking that was sort of all my own. And that was all really intimidating.
Well, you did a pretty incredible job with it from an
Thank
outsider
you.
looking in, if I must say.
Thank you.
I enjoyed many a meal when I was looking at the timeline. I was like, you were in the kitchen at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and you spent quite some time there, like a good chunk, a
Another
handful of
5
years.
years. That was my thing, 5 years.
But 5 years. I like it. Mine's lucky 13. Um,
Well, now my job is the longest I've had. Lilia turned 9 last year, so
yes,
or
congratulations.
this year rather, sorry.
Congratulations.
Thank
So
you.
as you're leading these kitchens and you're both locations or just
Yep,
one?
both.
Yeah, both locations. Which I think has its challenges in and of itself. Both location and just, different teams, etc. And were you thinking because this really was your own thing, but like you said, you were kind of looking for your own project type of thing.
I
So
don't
you
think
guys
and not my own
right.
thing.
You still had you want to do your own thing kind of in the back of your mind.
Yeah, I went through both. Like, I was really appreciative for what I was doing at a Voce. Like, it gave me an incredible platform, and there were many things I liked about it. And really, my own place came from not even knowing that I wanted to be in the business anymore. I got pretty pretty burnt out at a Voce. It was a tough environment. It was both restaurants were very, very busy. Um, the leadership there was different. Um, and and I got really burnt out and I wasn't like the best version of myself. And I kind of knew that. And I had saved a bunch of money and I was like, you know what? I've been doing this for 20 years. I've never taken a long break. I'm going to take a year off. It was an insane line of thinking. Um, but I did it and like kind of know and believe that I was really taking a year off. And I was like, no, I'm going to take a year off. And I kind of committed to that. And again, it was like scary and financially not the smartest decision I ever made. And, I shoot away a lot of headhunters and people calling for jobs because I was like, I'm not doing anything right now. And eventually they stopped calling and that can be very scary. And but through that time and then through a lot of meetings, once kind of that year passed and meeting with great restaurateurs and not so great restaurateurs, and really a lot of conversations with my now business partner, Sean, who was my neighbor and was very curious and he would ask a lot of questions. We would hang out. And um, through that, I was sort of able to say to myself, like, all right, you're 40. I was like probably 43 42 when I decided to open the restaurant. I was probably 42. And I was like, all right, you're 42, 43 years old. If you don't do this now, you're never going to do it. And that was sad to me because that was like a goal I had set since I was 22. And finally, like after a year of like contemplation and like I thought I might go back to school to become a therapist. I had all sorts of ideas, but I knew that like I sort of had to complete this mission for myself. I also knew that if I was gonna do it, I had to do it in a way that was really comfortable for me and different than I had done it in the past. And that took some time and, I was on the line at Lilia every night at the beginning for a long time, and the same with Missy when it opened. And it wasn't I always said I'm not gonna work 16-hour days anymore, and I'm not gonna do X and Y and Z, and I for the most part held strong to that. There obviously you open a restaurant, you're working a lot. But in the last few years, like how I've wanted to be has come to kind of fruition, and it happened very organically. As we've built the business, as our team has grown, as we have more support, it's freed me up to sort of focus on other aspects of the business and still be, the creative person in the kitchen. But now I have a culinary director as of 6, 8 months ago, which I didn't have before. And that changes things too. So it's been an interesting kind of trajectory.
Yeah, and I love I mean, I this story never gets old and, we're not even getting into the details of it. Um, but, one of the things that we see often, and I'm sure you've seen as you continue to mentor and give advice, where, someone, let's call it a chef, is creative and just has always dreamed about opening something, can either rush or take time or maybe get connected with the not ideal scenario or business partner because they want to move forward so badly or they're impatient or something seems off but it sounds good and they want to just move forward, right? What advice do you have to somebody in that scenario who just really is itching to open something of their own and is not quite found the right partner or, business partners or scenario?
Yeah, I think like I'd say a few things. I had this goal of, I just had this conversation with someone yesterday, a former team member of ours who worked at Missy's Kitchen and worked at Lilia in the front of house, and he's really eager to kind of he left us a year and a half ago, and he's very eager to open his own place. And I've sort of been like, you know, meeting with him every few months and sort of looking at his business plan and his ideas. And um, I think I would say I thought I was gonna open a restaurant by the time I was 30. I made a very arbitrary goal in my head that made no sense, and I would say just, like, slow down, like, your 40s, you're still young, right? Your 30s, you're still really young, and I didn't open Lilia till I was 44. I turned 45 a month after it opened, and that to me was like, "Oh, man, I'm, like, behind the game." But I also believe it's, like, what one of the things that contributed to Lilia's success and thereafter Missy is that I did have a different set of skills and a different demeanor and a different confidence level, and the right partner and the right space. And I think like there are a lot of things that have to fall into place. It can't just be I'm a good chef. And so I was fortunate also to like work in kind of bigger restaurants at Voce and Spiaggia where, like, I was in P&L meetings, like, I knew the finances. I wasn't always great at managing them, but I understood what needed to happen, and you really need that as an owner. You can't and we really try and teach our chefs, and our leaders what it means to run a financially viable business and what food costs should be and holding them accountable for it and what labor costs should be and holding them accountable. And I have seen them grow in that. And sometimes it's not the fun part of the job, right? But I think there's so many aspects to just running restaurants. And I think like it's very easy to be like, I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that job. They're offering me X percentage and X salary, and that sounds good because it's better than anything I had before. Which by the way, like is sort of how I fell into of Voce. I wanted to come back to New York. It was an amazing opportunity. They offered me an insane salary. They offered me partnership, which really at the end of the day meant nothing. It was really more like profit sharing. I had no decision making power in the greater good of the company. I had decision making power in the kitchen. And so I think you have to really know what you want and know who you're partnering with and be patient to find the right thing because it is a long-term commitment. And sure, you can always change that commitment and leave and whatever, but like if you really want to open a place, like you want it to have longevity.
Yeah. Especially nowadays, and not just, I mean, leadership, and when you have your own place and run your own business, you're thinking about everything and anything, including, the food, right? The culture. How are you going to create an environment that not only diners want to come to, but people are gonna
Yeah.
wanna work in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I wish food, I certainly think about it a lot and I'm still very involved in the creative aspect of it and making sure things are consistent, but there's 40 other things. I mean, I've put out, 4 fires already this morning that had nothing to do with food. So you're definitely and you have to want to do that too. Some chefs don't want to do that. Like I love I love all aspects of it. Some are more exciting than others. Like, do I wish I could sit in my window all day in my pasta room and roll out sheets of pasta? Yeah, kind of. Some days I do. Um, but that's not the reality I've sort of created for myself. And I I think you have to really want to do wear many hats if you want to open a restaurant. And there's no shame in just wanting to be a chef or in a corporate position that's really important to running a company. Not everyone is meant to open their own place. For me, it was really important to me. But for some people, they just want to be in the kitchen and they just want to cook and they just want to create, and that's really okay.
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
It's
um
better than okay.
yeah.
It's like should make someone really happy if that's like what they're really passionate about.
Yeah, and I think what's great about this industry, and we talk about it all the time, is that you get your foundation, you meet people, you do a great job, and you learn. Um, there's really many, many different ways you can take your career. I mean, a lot of different opportunities that require the skills and the foundation that you get growing up, working through this industry in various positions and roles. And I think we see also sometimes people have their restaurant and then they go back to working in a corporate environment or for somebody else, and that's like their happy place.
This definitely wouldn't be my happy place. I can't imagine like not working for myself anymore, but like I think the beauty of what has happened to the industry, there's so much even outside of restaurants. There's what you do that's very connected to the culinary community. There's recipe testing jobs. There's, you know, There are people who wanna be influencers, and they make a living at it, and they're cooking, and they're making themselves happy. There's TV careers, there's, like, a lot of stuff out there. There's writing. There's so much stuff out there that a lot of which wasn't really available. There's tech. There's a lot of tech stuff that really wasn't, like, available when I started cooking in 30 years ago, 32 years ago. Like, you just cook. Like, you either went front of house or back of house, and that's what you did. And um, I encourage people, like, it's not always awesome. Like, I have a sous chef leaving who is going to she's had this side hustle of styling and food styling for a while, and she wants to explore it full time. And, like, you have to give people the grace to do that. I'm not thrilled that she's leaving, but, like, I understand it, and I'm happy for her, and I wish her this best success. And at the end of the day, restaurants are not for everyone. And I've seen that more and more over the last, 5, 6 years, is that, I'll meet people, cooks, chefs, and I'll be like, that's gonna be the next person. And they find out that they just don't wanna be in kitchens, whether it's a lifestyle thing or it's too hectic or whatever it is. And it makes me sad, but I also am happy that there are other avenues for people to explore their culinary interests.
Yeah, and you touched upon it a little bit when you started talking about, you were on the line every night when you first started opening, Lilia and Missy, and obviously, as a business owner, you typically that's the process. But over the years, as you have built your teams and your leadership and your culture, you've been able to kind of start shifting to kind of the next part of your leadership journey.
Yeah.
Mentoring, giving advice, speaking on podcasts and panels. And that's so incredibly important for many, many reasons, not just, people hearing your story and your experience and your advice, but then also being, somebody that folks who are starting out in the industry or wanting to come to the industry can look up to and really kind of again learn from what you're saying. What works for you may not work for them, but it's still a great example of one way someone has done it successfully.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also, when you're doing those mentoring things, you really have to listen to what people want for themselves, because what they want and what I want aren't the same. And you can mentor someone who doesn't want to do exactly what you want to do. Um, I certainly have the best advice if there's someone who wants to do what I do. But yeah, it's been an exciting part of my journey. And people always say, "Do you miss being on the line every night? And do you miss being in the restaurants every night?" And, like, there's a part of me that does, mostly the camaraderie of being in the kitchen. And even, all of my kitchens are open. So, it's front of house and back of house that you have a camaraderie with. But there's also, like, I know it's the right thing for me right now. And I wouldn't want to be on the line every night. And when I want to be in the restaurants, I'm there. And last night I took some friends to get soft serve at Lilia after dinner, and just, like, hanging out on outside the cafe. And um, I went in to ask a manager something when they were done, and I ended up talking to regulars for a half hour that I hadn't seen in a really long time, and it made me so happy. So there is a part of it that I really do miss, and that those connections are hard to get if you're not in the restaurants every night. But that's just sort of like, you have to pick and choose what your time is best spent doing. And I try and schedule times to be in the restaurant throughout the week. Even if it's for a few hours, I can take a real pulse of what's going on.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things, in leadership in general is I know a skill that I still continue to try to work on is this delegation. And, when you have the rights and taking a step away and kind of focusing and holding on to the most important or things that you love the most, but then really trusting, the folks you've trained or you've put, are working there to do it for you, right? To do their jobs and to let them have their own kind of say and way because you've trained them or they understand the culture and everything. How is that? And you mentioned you have a culinary director now. How is that process coming in and what is that? Are you just like do you hear like angels singing sometimes when
Sometimes, yeah. Um, It's good, it's been interesting because I think a few things have happened. One is that obviously he's taken a lot off my plate, um, or added to the things I wasn't doing because I didn't have time or I didn't want to do them or whatever. And he's really good on all fronts. He's fantastic at mentoring. He's fantastic at, um, the financial stuff and sort of doing analysis of like where we can do better. you know, he's really good at it and he's really good at R&D. And we think really similarly. So in terms of food, but there are moments where it's been interesting for me because I do have to let go. I've never had this position before. I've never even had exec chefs before. I've had CDCs, and that's a really different role, right? So if you're going to hire a culinary director, you cannot micromanage them. And letting go of some of the creative and sort of seeing his viewpoints on stuff, even if I don't necessarily agree, like there are things I just have to be like, all right, like I'm gonna let this one go. There are things I fight him back on and say, yeah, I don't like that dish or whatever. But like for the most part, we like the same food. Um, and he's just been so additive. Like it's really been amazing, and I enjoy being with him all day. Like he's fun and funny, and it's really nice to have someone around who really understands Italy and regional Italian cooking. He's worked in Italian food for a very long time, and he knows different things than me, and more in some areas than I do, and vice versa. But he's also sort of like any relationship is like it's getting a mirror held up to you and saying like, what do I need to do better, or what am I not good at? And he's really good at a lot of things I'm not good at. And he also doesn't like want to sit on podcasts and do this. So it's a really good balance and a really good partnership. It's great.
Yeah, and I think that speaks volumes to you, and then the team and culture you've built as well. Because we didn't get into it, in detail, but I know you and Sean talked about working together for many months and got to know each other before you actually decided to start working together.
Yeah.
And I know in past conversation that same with this culinary director, you knew him
Yeah.
before, he started working with you all. So
Yeah, and
kudos,
I
kudos,
had
kudos to
only
you.
talked to two other people for that position over the last 5 years. And one of them much more seriously than the other. And it just was like a timing thing that didn't work out for me and Sean. It didn't work out for them. And I knew that this position was so specific and it couldn't just be a person. Like it had to be someone that I wanted to spend a lot of time with, that I want to go out to dinner with, that I want to talk about food with all day, that we want to explore. And so it was really important, and it all fell into place in the right way. And I think he's happy. I hope he's happy.
Are you listening? Are you happy now?
Mike, are you out there? He seems pretty happy. And he has a lot of autonomy. Like it's not like I tell him where to go every day and what to do, and he's kind of finding his way and making this his own job. And because it wasn't a previous position, it, like, works because he's like, "This is what I think I need to work on today with this person," and blah, 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 and we talk about it, but, like, for the most part, he's creating his own world. And we try and do that with a lot of people. Like, we have a lot of people who we didn't have HR before COVID. And then we had someone, and now we have a different person, Isaiah, who you know very well. And Isaiah, it's not like I'm calling Isaiah every day and being like, this is how you need to do your job. He's created it and made it his own, and we give him guidance where we think he needs guidance. But really, it's like he owns that department. And he seeks guidance when he needs it. And the same with Eliza, who you know very well too, I think. Eliza was our first director of operations, and she's really made it her own position. And the same thing with her. It's not like I'm telling her what to do every day. She knows what she needs to do, and she's an incredible leader. And we guide her where we think she needs guidance. And it's been really cool to see all these people kind of grow with the company and create their own place.
Yeah. I have to say it's been really cool from the outside looking in as well, because I've had the very fortunate kind of working relationship with all the people that you're
Yeah.
talking about, and it's unique. It really is. You've created a really unique, wonderful culture, and that's not easy to do.
Thank
And
you.
it's a culture of people who clearly are comfortable in doing what they know what's right and what needs to be done, and they're
Yeah.
figuring out, and they ask questions, and they're willing to, try things, which
Yeah.
is not always the case. And that comes from leadership. I think you can tell when an organization is fear is not the word, but when people can't make decisions, or they're unsure of what direction, it's definitely something that prohibits kind of
Yeah, and
things moving.
as we've grown, we also rely on them to help make decisions, and it sort of is important. Again, I come from a world where it was like my way or the highway, like, and so this creating this culture with Sean and living in the culture has been like, it's not the easiest
Right. I
thing,
was gonna say it's not easy.
it's not the easiest thing, and it's like been a big transition for me because to have sort of a lot of opinions and a lot of, so to speak, chefs in the kitchen, what wasn't always easy for me. Um, but I like it, and it's just made me better, but I work at it every single day. And I've told you I work with an executive coach who really has changed my life. And the first thing he taught me was like, you have to be vulnerable with your team. You can't just be this like tough person that they don't know. And that was a hard transition for me because that was not taught to me in kitchens for 25, 30 years, right? Um, but he's been really pivotal in my growth. And like I don't ever not want to have him on my team.
Well, that's also great advice. And on that note, I think we're gonna move to some quick fire. What advice would you tell your younger self?
Patience, slow down, don't hold yourself to the goals that maybe are unattainable. Make sort of smaller goals before you have this like goal that you probably won't meet, and just slow down and sort of enjoy the process instead of just finishing the goal.
What's your advice for someone struggling in the industry?
It depends how they're struggling, but I think like we all have different struggles throughout the whole career, and I think it's really important to evaluate what you want out of the industry, but also it's really important to be able to talk to someone about it and find a mentor um, that you can really rely on, and don't be afraid of that. I see so many times people like leave our restaurant and they say, well, I wasn't learning, or like this job's too hard, or I don't want to work nights. And they go and they find another job, and they've never had a discussion with anyone. And I think like people are intimidated to talk to their superiors and their bosses. And like, I don't want people to view it that way. I want people to know that that is our role, is to guide you. Yes, our role is to make sure that you're performing very, very at a very high level in our restaurants, but our obligation and our responsibility is to guide you too, and you should never be afraid to go to one of your bosses. And everyone's more comfortable. Look, there are people who are way more comfortable with Sean. There are people that have been way more comfortable with me. There are people who are way more comfortable with Mike now, the culinary director. Like, and that's okay as long as you pick someone.
What's your advice for fellow hospitality leaders?
Listen, I don't know that I'm in a position to give advice to other leaders. I think there's lots of different kinds of leadership, but I think what the most important thing now is to lead with, more kindness and more openness, and more listening, which again, I've said I wasn't great at for a lot of my career. And I'm still not great every day. Like I said, I work at it.
Missy, I thank you so much for not just many a delicious bowl of pasta, but also for joining us today and sharing your experience and your vulnerability and advice. There's so many great nuggets here, and we ran over because I was like, I just want you to talk. Thank you so much. We can't wait to see what's next.
Wonderful. Thank you. And congratulations to you. You've built an incredible thing. So
Thank you.
awesome. Bye.
Remember, success looks different for everyone in hospitality. No two paths are the same. If you have a leader or a topic you want to hear about, email media@culinaryaagents.com. Hospitality on the Rise is brought to you by Culinary Agents, connecting top talent with employers since 2012. Whether you're hiring or looking for your next opportunity, join us at culinaryaagents.com. For more inspiration, subscribe to Hospitality on the Rise and visit hospitalitycareerpaths.com, a free platform by Culinary Agents. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. And if you love this episode, share it with someone who could use a little inspiration.